We're here with Ryan and Rory today, and Ryan and Rory are brothers. They do a
Yeah.
podcast series. They live in Vermont, and the whole podcast thing is called Cultivating Connections, and it seems to be more about connecting to more of your emotions. Can you guys speak to that a little bit? Like what prompted you to start your podcast series? And yeah.
Yeah. Well, it started with us trying to get more connected to each other and to ourselves, and also just to the present moment and not trying to escape the present moment. So we started doing these little rituals together with me. It started with me, Rory, and our other friend Tom. And every Sunday we'd go out into the woods, go for a little hike, and then we would try and get into a state where we feel everything, feel our fear, our paranoia, our anxiety, our love and gratitude. And
It took us a long time to get there. I had been, we'd both been struggling most of our adult lives, me for 10 years with drug addiction and Ryan through different escapism and mental health and depression.
And so we started doing those rituals, and we noticed at first it was really uncomfortable because a lot of these feelings that we were repressing because they were hard to deal with. And
which made sense.
yeah, but in that setting, we felt safer to like uncover these things. And that was really what it was about, creating this space where we could go deeper into our emotions and feel them. And then when we were doing that, we thought, how can we integrate this into our everyday life? Like, how can we make this more impactful on every part of our life? And one of the ways we thought about doing that was if we did a podcast, it would give us a kind of an app to not only express and explore these things, but to just build upon these ideas and what we're trying to do in this setting and do it in our everyday life. And so it started as a podcast. Then we created a website and a nonprofit also called Cultivating Connections. And now we're trying to raise money to create events in our local community, events to just get people together and connect. And so far it's still in its infancy stage, but it's been really positive, and there's a lot of people that are really empowering in our community. And
yeah, we'd like to get back to a simpler time in life, when things were, community could get together, say 100 years ago. I was talking to someone in the local community. They said 100 years ago they knew everyone on the street, and now well, I don't know if it was exactly 100 years ago. She was about 89 or something. So let's say even 70 years ago or so, she said she knew everyone on the street, and now she doesn't know really anyone. And it's eye-opening when you talk to someone that wants to connect with and wants to be part of the community, and now it's 2020 and feels like it's just very hard to.
People feel alienated.
Yeah.
And like some of these older people that we talk to, in the past they could have help with stuff around their house and not have to worry about it, but now they feel like they don't know anyone in town, and they don't have the money to pay for these things. So we were thinking if we could help people like clear up their house, get rid of stuff, whatever they need, and do it on a community level where it's just like people doing it because they want to help the community, and that's the only motive, really.
Like, for example, that lady I was telling you about, I was helping her shovel her driveway last winter, and that it just felt so good to help someone that was in need, and that was very local and on my street. So it felt very connected, and so not that really played a huge role. I guess it did play a role in wanting to help the community for me, and Ryan and I were here. We're adults. We can help. We can do whatever people need for the most part. So why not?
Yeah.
Right. One of my most favorite things that I've told you guys before about the podcast that hit me so hard is in the first intro, you guys spoke about this idea as being like men, you feel maybe emotionally repressed and that like your emotions aren't valid, and it's sort of like a weaker sort of thing. And as you get older, you feel like talking more about your emotions and exploring them has brought you great benefit. So I guess my question is like, why do you it's kind of a weird question, I guess, is like, why do you feel like connecting more with your emotions is like healthier for overall population of people?
Well, I think it comes down to like like you were saying, as a kid, you're pure emotion. You let it out, you express yourself, you cry, you laugh, whatever. But as we get older, we learn to hide some of those things. We learn that fear and sadness is kind of a weak thing and it should be kind of repressed. But from my understanding of myself and psychology, what is repressed is not resolved. It just exerts its effect on us subconsciously in a way that we don't even understand fully. And so we can become almost robots or habitual people of habit that
creatures of habit
that don't really have control. We kind of give up our control.
We give up autonomy of our own mind in a way.
Yeah. But I think
Totally.
if we can be with these emotions, feel them, and let them resolve naturally, then they don't have such an effect on us in our subconscious.
Yeah, I mean, I've the women in my life, my mom, my girlfriend, my sister, some other females that are in my life that are friends and stuff that have told us, it's really kind of honorable that we're doing this as men, going out in the woods, having a ritual every week, trying to get in touch with emotions, because from their perspective, women are very good at that already. They're already very in touch with their intuition, their feelings. And I was thinking about it, it's like, it's really on men to develop that within ourselves. It's not anyone else's responsibility or opportunity, but our own. And not that, rituals should be strictly only men, but that's how our ritual is right now. And in this last Sunday, just a few days ago, in our ritual, it was very difficult. A lot of paranoia, a lot of fear, anxiety, and this is 16 weeks in. So
yeah,
I don't think it's not about it making it easier, or it's going to get easier. Maybe it will over time, but so far, I mean, the last one we had was pretty intense.
Yeah, like
Wow.
I kind of thought that it would kind of get easier as it went along, and in some ways it has, but in some ways we're allowing ourselves to get deeper into the fear and paranoia, which is more empowering the more we can do it. But it's also really scary because it's like kind of in a way we feel we're just scratching the surface. So how deep can we go? That is like the ultimate,
Well, what did you?
fear.
If I just wanted to hear you say like how you felt during this last session, because you told me that you felt as though, I don't know what you said exactly, but it was.
I mean, I felt like I couldn't do this anymore. Like I'd have to
Wow.
quit because like it was too intense, and I really felt like if I was given any more of that feeling, it would have overwhelmed me.
Jeez.
Yeah, and then you like looked at me, you walked up to me, put your hand on me, which it's not just me and Ryan, we have Tom and our father there. So we have, and he just looked straight at me.
I looked at Rory and I went and touched his hand and said, I'm so scared, because usually I'm really most connected with Rory because it's kind of how it started, but he wasn't really in that feeling with me as much. But then I glanced over at my dad and I made eye contact with him. And immediately when I made eye contact, I knew that he was in that feeling with me. And it was so reassuring. At that point, I knew, okay, I'm going to be okay. I can go through this because I'm not doing it alone,
Well, and it was intense for me, but I was able, I think, to psychologically maybe circumvent it, or just not really feel 100% what you were feeling, but I knew what you were going through. Yeah. I mean, because I have been through, I think every human's been through a lot of, that type of feeling where it's like everything is like daunting and everything is feeling as though it's
unresolvable and just overwhelming
and just not normal. It feels weird. Everything feels different. And so I understood what you were going through. It's just I didn't really want to go there.
Yeah.
That day, because we'd been in those situations before up there, and I was telling myself everything, and I was trying to tell you everything's okay, like, yeah, it's all good. But
I think there's definitely times when we still try and avoid the feeling, even though like our main goal, we're there to try and feel these things, but but yeah, so far it's been powerful. I think in my regular everyday life, I'm able to feel anxiety and make a good choice. Like in the past, I would feel anxious and I'd just go grab some food or a cup of coffee or anything. And it wasn't even a conscious choice. It was just like anxiety, do this. But
Yeah.
now I still grab those things. I grab a coffee or thing, but I think, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Do I want this? And at least gives myself the choice.
Well, and for me, and I'm only saying this because this is fact. We're 16 weeks in. Before the 16 weeks, I was using drugs every day. I was on methadone. I haven't used heroin since the second week we've started. I'm off methadone. Haven't smoked a cigarette in like 6 days or had any nicotine in 6 days,
Wow.
which is pretty incredible because I was habitually smoking a Juul.
Yeah.
Like every moment of every day, always just hitting that Juul. And I know coffee isn't the healthiest, but I enjoy that. I can enjoy it more now because I don't have the other things that I fall back on. But
yeah, you just feel like you have more choice over your decisions.
Yeah,
right?
more autonomy of my own mind and what I choose to do and choose to react. And yeah.
I want to ask you guys, like on a personal level, this feeling of like when you're a kid, kind of giving up your emotional autonomy and just going on autopilot. How is that manifested in your own lives, like on a personal level? Like you talked a little bit about drug problems and those sorts of things.
Yeah, I can speak. I guess I can speak through relationships because that's an emotion. That's almost all emotion based.
Yep.
I disconnected with my family in certain ways, not every way. I was still around them, but I was kind of shut off. I wasn't able to, like Ryan says, he wasn't able to talk to me and really feel me in the past 10 years. I mean, he would hear me, but he said whatever I said was it didn't really register with him because it was almost as if everything I was saying was like almost a falsetto or something. Like,
it was sense? Like you're hiding behind this barrier. So I wasn't actually like, I could get what you were saying logically, but I wasn't getting any emotional exchange. Whereas when we were kids, it was pure emotion,
Yeah.
So then it get to a point where I didn't even want to talk to you because it just didn't seem like I was getting anything. Like if I put myself out there and was vulnerable with you, I wouldn't get that in return because you were hiding behind the heroin, which was numbing the emotions,
Yeah, I mean it's hard to hear, but it's I hear you and it's true, but and then like with female relationships, like in the past, dating and whatnot, I was just a shell of myself. I was never really myself. I couldn't be vulnerable and really let any women into or like break down my own defenses to show people who I really was. And once you start a relationship like that, it doesn't resolve easy. A lot of my relationships have never resolved because of that, because I showed a certain side of myself that wasn't really me, but I kind of had to stick to it because that's what I told myself.
For me, I think the biggest change, honestly, is my relationship with my parents. Like growing up, I looked to them, my dad and mom both as like my heroes, but I couldn't be myself around them because I was always looking at myself through their lens of what they expected of me, of, this good student, never does anything bad. And then I was almost living two different lives. Like with my friends, I was like this rebellious kid that would have fun. And then with my parents, I was this straight edge guy and it just led me to not really know who I was as a person because I was trying to be two different people, but never just listening to my own intuition. And with my parents, it ended up getting to a point where I couldn't really talk to them at all. Like I didn't tell my parents I never told my parents I had a girlfriend until I was like 21. I never told them I drank until I was at least 21. Like I didn't tell them any of this stuff. So when I came to them after my first psychedelic experience at 23 and I told them about it, I was terrified. And my mom's reaction was, she was terrified too. She was like, okay, you had the experience, now don't ever go back. Because she was just worried. And I get that, they're
Yeah.
both also in the medical field, so they've heard, horror stories. They have this different view of things.
Yeah, my mom was a psychiatric nurse, so she's worked in all different types of environments of people who have taken drugs, any sort of drug, even
And develops
even cannabis, which is legal up here, but truly, she had to deal with a lot of people that
had
had a lot of
traumatic experiences and
psychosis and stuff, and so it's a healthy worry, it is. It's but
now I feel like I can be maybe not completely open with them, but more open than I would have imagined in the past, and it's really positive. Because like the thing about deeper connection is you have to be vulnerable and kind of put your trust in someone and say they have a choice to either reject me for who I am or accept me. And
Right.
what I found, if someone loves you, they will always accept you, even if what you tell them is really hard to accept,
Yeah, and that's tough for me. I feel like I don't trust anyone, at least outside of my family. Naturally, when I was really young, like 5 years old, I had my first experience or exposure to death. I was with my family, and we were up. It was crazy. I mean, we were up at this waterfall, and it was like 8 p.m. It was getting darker. We're about to leave. My dad says a lady was pushed off this waterfall a couple of years ago by some man, and I was 5, so I didn't know. It was just
like your first exposure to death.
Yeah. So I walked home. I walked back to the car with them, but I don't remember that. I black out. Like subconsciously, I black out, and I remember waking up a couple hours later. My family's eating dinner at the kitchen table or the dining room table, and I'm up against the kitchen cabinet just crying. And they're like, I just wake up there, and
no one knows why. They think you're just crying because something, whatever, and you can't even express why.
I had no capacity to tell anybody. It was ineffable, kind of like a psychedelic experience, And so that night I'm going to bed, and I'm hearing voices like it's so odd because like I'm 5 years old. I don't know what that means, but it was really, really scary. So like since then, I don't know if it's since then or what. I had it's really tough to trust people outside of the family, and I think that accounts for a lot of my insecurity and my lack of vulnerability in the past around people. And now I'm able to work on that.
One of the things I really like that you guys said is when you're vulnerable with somebody, you want them to like accept you or be vulnerable back because it makes you feel validated. I think I like that a lot. It's very true. It's like when you tell someone, for example, you tell like a person you love them, maybe a girlfriend, maybe a boyfriend, or just a partner, you want them to say it back because it makes your emotions feel validated. So I like that a lot. I do want to ask you guys, can you guys talk about your first psychedelic experiences, each of you, together? Yeah. Each of you, I'm very curious about this.
Yeah, I'd love to.
I wanted to also just say, like, that's another thing when you tell someone about a psychedelic experience and people brush it off as crazy, that's like the most dismissive and disempowering thing. And I think that's a lot of what happens to a lot of people that had these these profound experiences, and they try and tell people, and people say, "Oh, you're crazy," and then they just get pushed out by society.
Yeah. So
right.
like
to the individual, that experience is profound, even if someone else can't understand it. It is, and it needs to be respected as valid.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think all psychedelic experiences should be taken more seriously by other people. I mean, because you hear people say things like, "Oh, I had this experience. The whole world is energy," or something, and they're like,
right.
It's like, well, yeah, you may not be explaining it the best, and but the person that hears you write you off as crazy. It's like, well, what is the person supposed to do then? It's they're trying to express it. They're trying to put themselves out there, be vulnerable, and talk about it,
and then they end up repressing they'll try and repress it in their mind. Like, I'll tell you my first experience, and this is a good example because there was a part of me that said, like, don't ever revisit this experience. Don't tell anyone because they'll just think you're crazy. But I did, and it's been really positive, at least because the people in my life have been accepting of it. But so I was 23 when I had my first psychedelic experience, because before then I partied a lot, but I always stayed away from psychedelics because I heard of the propaganda of, going crazy, losing your mind. And that was like my ultimate fear in a way. And so I actually grew some psilocybin myself, and I took them, and it was a pretty mild experience, very positive, like loving, euphoric. And then I went into my room to lay down, and I was having these thoughts that I thought were really profound. And one of these thoughts I just couldn't let go. It was this thought of, it was a thought of that we come from mushrooms, that like psilocybin is the genetic blueprint for serotonin is so similar to psilocybin that it was probably borrowed from it. And I kept repeating this over and over in my head. And I was repeating it so much I couldn't stop that I actually blacked out, got stuck in a thought loop, I guess. And I don't remember anything, but I come out of this state and it feels like it's been 5 minutes. But I look at my phone and it's been like an hour and a half, and I'm no longer tripping. And the only thing I remember from that, like being in that state, was just like this swirling vortex of colors. And if I thought of that, it would bring me to a feeling of existential dread and paranoia in my stomach. And so I just kept saying, don't think of it. Don't think of it. Like, don't bring that image up, because you'll get trapped there again. And it was the most terrifying experience of my life at the time. But I did have this intuitive sense that said, just sit with it. This is actually the first time I really, and it's interesting that this is like what I try and cultivate in my life now and in this ritual, is to just feel the feelings. And I was using substances every day before then: kratom, cannabis, tobacco, alcohol, Adderall. And I just stopped them all immediately and said, feel everything that comes up. And so for 3 to 4 days, I sat with the worst existential anxiety of my life. And I was just laying in bed for most of it, just couldn't move, couldn't do anything, just sat there, couldn't even sleep because there was just so much paranoia. But on the 5th day, that paranoia and anxiety began to transform. And that 5th day was one of the best days of my life. I felt pure gratitude and love. I broke down in my kitchen and started crying and just saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. And it felt like I had waded through all of this bullshit, all this fear and anxiety that I'd been repressing my whole life. I allowed it in, I confronted it, and then it began to resolve. And as I did that, I allowed myself to feel the love and gratitude that I was repressing as well. And I ended up changing a lot of my behaviors after that point. And a lot of them, for 3 months, like, I woke up early, I meditated, I did yoga, I started playing the piano, like doing art. And I realized through that, after about 3 months of that, I relapsed into old patterns again, depressive patterns. And I kind of felt like I wasted an opportunity. I actually fell deeper into depression than I was before, because it was almost like I was given this chance and I squandered it. And that was really hard. But the thing that I realized I was lacking then that I have now is a consistent structure where I can return to every week. And now I feel just so much more empowered to use those lessons that I've learned and those experiences and those feelings to direct my life. And it's not like I have to do this, I have to just be the perfect person the rest of my life. I just have to be a little better than I was last week, just work on one new thing,
Absolutely. Yeah. Self-improvement, so fulfilling, and
Yeah,
as well as developing new habits is great.
absolutely.
But it's hard to develop new habits that are good, right?
Yeah. I think it's a problem if
it is very hard.
A problem to search for happiness, because happiness is fleeting, but growth leads to fulfillment, and fulfillment
Definitely.
is, I don't know, what I strive for.
Yeah, that was great. You want me to talk about my?
Yeah, I'm curious. Yeah.
Well, I think it's important to say that in high school, over 10 years ago, probably when I was 15 or 16, I had my first psychedelic experience. I took one hit of LSD, one tab, and I'd taken mushrooms after that. So I had psychedelic experiences in high school. But what the important thing is the intention behind it, because I never had an intention to use it for a therapeutic tool. I more used it as any drug, just to escape
Yeah.
and just do it. I mean, I don't know, and I don't remember exactly, but so I hadn't had a psychedelic experience since I was probably 17 or 18, and the most recent one I had was Thanksgiving of just the last Thanksgiving, couple, 8 months ago, or what, I don't even know how many, longer than 8 months, 10 months now.
So it was almost 10 years after.
Almost 10 years. And,
Wow.
and I'd heard about psychedelics, when I was in my active addiction, and I thought to myself, well, I don't know how they would help me. I mean, I know, because I've done it before. They're not going to help me. I don't need those. And then Ryan was trying to urge me just show me the benefits through the different studies and whatnot that and just reports online that ayahuasca can be very helpful for addiction. And I was still very arrogant or ignorant or whatever. I didn't really give it much credit or look into it very much, but I said I'd do it because why not? I mean, I was at the end of I was pretty much on a course straight for death at that point, because I was using every single day.
It almost felt like you were ambivalent, because I kept bringing it up to you, and it was like, I'm just going to do this just to get you off my back, kind of. But
yeah, I think eventually it got to that, because it was almost, I remember the day of, and I was like, I'm not doing this. I don't want to do it. And Ryan was like, well, you don't have to do it, but why not? So I was like, all right. So the intention behind it was to, I don't know, just have some reflection on who I'd become, to bring back the love that is buried deep down. And I had like 3 things I wrote down, and those were 2 of them. Was one, reflect on who I have become, bring me back to who I am, the love inside of me. And there's one other thing, and so I didn't have any expectations. Like I had written those down, but that was just because I was told to write some things down, and I took the ayahuasca. It was ayahuasca I took. It wasn't a high dose. It was actually a low or medium dose, which was probably exactly what I needed, because it was mellow. I was sitting at Thanksgiving dinner. I was definitely tripping, but it wasn't overwhelming. And it was actually it was bliss. It was, people say with ayahuasca that it's very nurturing. They say Mother Ayahuasca is the feminine spirit in it. And I don't know about exactly all that, but I do know that it was extremely nurturing, and I was able to see things about who I'd become, who the people around me are, more purely almost. I could almost see through the bull crap and just see exactly who these people that I was surrounded with are for their true self. And no, I didn't eat anything because I was under the influence of it. Everyone around me was eating, which is awesome. It was just so, it just brought me back, I guess, really to who I was in a lot of ways. So after that night, I woke up the next day. I don't know, something changed in me. I didn't use for 4 months. I was using every day for 6 months. And after that experience, I didn't use for 4 months. And what happened was I was on 120 milligrams of methadone. Right. So I was taking my methadone, but I wasn't using the heroin, which I had been every day previously. And I went from 120 milligrams down to 1 milligram of methadone within the next 3 almost 4 months after that. So yeah, it had a huge impact on me because it influenced me to try to get off methadone. And I say try to, because when I got down to 1 milligram, that's when I started withdrawing.
Yeah, symptoms of withdrawal. Yeah.
Yeah, they were intense. So I relapsed. I started using again, but I think it was about for 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks where I was struggling. I wasn't using every day, but I was using here and there.
And you went up to like 15 milligrams of methadone to try and.
Yeah, I went back to 15 milligrams because I didn't want to be withdrawing through it.
But then we started the ritual group.
Yeah,
and
so we started doing these rituals. I was just excited to get out there with Ryan and just be out in the woods and just experience that. But the first ritual we had was, I remember it pretty vividly. It was intense, but it wasn't too intense. The second week.
Well, the first week we didn't really know what we were getting into.
Right.
But when we walked away, we knew it was powerful, and I think it scared us all a little bit because the second week we almost all quit.
Yeah.
One of the members actually dropped out.
Wow.
And then Rory was like,
because
are we going today? And I'm like, yeah, we're going. And then our other friends like, it might rain. I don't know. Maybe we should call it off. And I'm like, we're doing this.
Yeah. Luckily, Ryan conjured up the whatever it was just to get us all going. So I'm so grateful that he did, because that second week of ritual was one of the most intense experiences for me, and probably for everyone in my family, because what happened was I was planning on using heroin the next day, but it was so deep in my subconscious, I didn't even talk about it until I was in the ritual, where I was feeling very vulnerable, and I was like full of fear. And Ryan and our friend Tom could see that in me, and
I've never really seen you so scared as that in my life. And that's when you said, there's drugs are going to be here.
Yeah, I said that I'm getting drugs tomorrow morning. They'll be at the house.
And the plan was actually for me to intercept the drugs so Rory didn't get them. Right.
And that was the plan. And that was a great plan, but conceptually. But that night, when I was still, after the ritual, that entire night was great. And I didn't have any real urge to use. But the next morning,
he woke up before me.
I woke up before Ryan, before anyone.
I remember waking up to hearing my mom shouting, "Rory, Rory," and I knew what had happened. I jumped out of bed. I ran to his room, and I saw Rory on his bed, just lifeless.
Jeez.
And he overdosed.
Jeez.
My parents gave him 3 shots of Narcan.
Yeah, 3 shots of 4 milligram Narcan. So that's 12 milligrams. That's a super high dose of Narcan.
I was just walking back in Rory's room, back and forth, just like, it was almost like my whole life with Rory gone was kind of flashing before my eyes. And I was like, this isn't how it's going to be. I remember I got on Rory's bed. I held his hand and I said, "Rory, come back to me."
Oh my God.
And his body was like blue. I've never seen a body like that. But right when I sat down and said that to him, there was a little flush of color come back to his face, and I knew, like, okay, he's still with us. And then he came back, and
and when I came back, oh my God, it was the most physical and mental pain I think I'd been through maybe ever. Like,
I've never seen someone in so much pain.
All
you could say was how sorry you were.
I was like, I was like screaming, because it wasn't just Ryan. I mean, it was Ryan was there. It was my dad, my mom. They were all in my room, and I was just yelling like how sorry I am. I was violently throwing up. I literally felt, and I've heard people say this, but I've never felt it so viscerally, is the idea of a hammer hitting your head like as hard as it can. It was just like boom, 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 and it was like, it hurt so bad, and I was withdrawing because the Narcan, it puts you in immediate withdrawal, so my whole body was aching, and I was like, I need more heroin. I can't do this. And they luckily sat there with me, and supported me, and I did get through it.
Yeah.
And then later that day,
later that day, he was using heroin again. And it's unbelievable to see that as me. I was like, you just went through this. You don't want to put us through this. And that's how I knew it. It wasn't rational. It wasn't like you intended to do this. But at the same time, when that same day for the first time in our life, he said, I think I need to go to rehab. And he's been to rehab before, but never did he ever say, I think I need to go to rehab, you know? And that's when I knew there was something a little different.
Yeah, and I think it was, I'll give credit to the rituals, but also give credit to just being there with you, Mom and Dad, and seeing what I had put you through that day. You know, I'd put them through a hell of a lot of things the past 10 years. Maybe just as bad at some points.
Probably it was all that hurt, all that pain, all at once. You felt that, you know?
Yeah, it was almost like I felt the past. And I don't think without the ayahuasca experience and these rituals, I don't think I would have been able to feel all the. Well, I don't know. I can't. That's hypothetical, but I don't think I would have been able to feel all of the hurt and pain that I put everyone through for the past 10 years. It's almost as if I was able to reflect on it a little more because of those experiences that I had a few months prior, or the rituals, which was like the day before. And
that was a really hard couple of weeks, because Rory had 3 days before he went to rehab because they couldn't get him in right away.
Yeah.
So those 3 days, he gave me the rest of his drugs, and every night he said, let me give me them. I just need a little bit. I just need one more time.
I just said, I need one more time. I need one more time. And I was not letting up from that,
except for when I told him, I literally said, like, if you really think this is what you need, it was the last day before he went to rehab. He said he needed one more. I said, if this is what you really need, I will sit with you and watch you do this, and you'll see the effect it has on me. You'll see how it breaks my heart. And he said, okay. And I said, okay, I'll go get the drugs. And right as I got up to get them, he said, all right, never mind. And that was like a miracle for me to hear, because I've seen him before in that state, and there's no getting through to him. But at that point, when he said, you know, okay, I don't need to, I knew that, I don't know, I believed in him, and I believed in myself and what we're doing more than anything. And so that week he went into rehab, and he said, please continue to do the ritual, even though I'm not there. So we had my dad come with me, my dad, and our friend Tom, and we called Rory during the ritual.
That's sweet.
It was amazing, because he literally was telling us a story. He's like, yeah, sweet. So I refused the methadone today. He said he got in the van.
Okay, so yeah, I got in the van because they were like, you need to get your methadone, let's go. And I was just like, at that point I was like, I know I need to get off methadone, but I'll put it off another day or something, you know, or whatever. My mind was working. And so I got in the car, and we pull out of the street, and we go down a little ways. I'm like, I'm not taking my methadone, just turn around. Which, you know, it was pretty, that
was amazing.
Unlike me, or unlike an addict in any way, really. That
I think we were all having doubts in that third week. And when we called Rory and he said that, I was like, that's amazing. Because I didn't think he would, honestly. I mean,
I didn't think I would either. I had no belief that I'd ever get off methadone, because, you know, when people are on it, they're usually on it for life, and that's kind of how I was feeling for the past 7 years.
In a lot of ways, they kind of encourage you to take it.
Oh yeah, they were like, get in the car, like, you got to go take it. And I'm like,
yeah,
it you know, it makes sense, because methadone does save lives, and it probably may have even saved my life in the past 7 years when I was on it once or twice here and there. But it was a point in my life where I was like, I can't keep perpetuating this escapism through, because, you know, I would still use heroin, even on the methadone, but because the methadone, I didn't feel it as much as the heroin, obviously, but the methadone in itself, even though I didn't feel it as much, it was still a false reality I was living in, or an escape from feelings.
Yeah.
One of the things that, like you said earlier, was about before you had a psychedelic experience, you wrote down your intentions of the trip. I've done this before too, and I think it's a really effective method. You write down sort of what you want out of the experience and how you're feeling about it, because it makes you more emotionally aware during the experience. So I like that a lot. Do you guys ever find that do you guys write before any of the, so you guys have your rituals, do you guys write it all before your rituals of what you want out of the ritual, or not necessarily each week? Do you do any writing about it, I guess?
Well, yeah, we actually started the first couple of weeks bringing a journal and trying to write about it. But
yeah, that's good. I like that.
In the session, though, we found that, like, when someone's talking, I want to listen to them. I can't be writing stuff down. It kind of distracts me. So we stopped doing that, but I write, or past couple of weeks I've tried to write every time, and I've actually put up
afterwards.
Yeah, I put up my writings on my blog and
Nice.
shared them. My dad writes too, and usually the next day we try and talk about what we wrote down or the main themes of the session.
And I'm sure I'll get to a point where I'll start journaling more. Every once in a while I do jot some things down. I'm just not in the habit of journaling that often, but I know there's huge benefit in it, like you were saying, writing the intention down.
Yeah,
just doing
definitely.
is it gets it in our mind emotionally more, and we're able to get more out of an experience. So ultimately, I'd like to do that more.
After my first psychedelic experience, that's when I really understood the power of journaling, because I didn't have really anyone to talk to, because I wasn't talking to my family that much. It was just me and a journal, and I filled up like 3 journals in like 3 months.
Wow.
And I still have that stuff, and I still return to it a lot. And a lot of it comes back up in my life today, and it just kind of reoccurs. And I like writing now. I like it a lot. I think it's really powerful, a good way of expression for sure.
Yeah, agreed. It helps you remember the experience and also reflect upon like how you felt at that given moment in time. So
Yeah,
I like this as well. Yeah, it's good.
It's almost like having a conversation with yourself when you don't have someone else writing it.
See, I'm the type where I'm very like subconscious about my writing. So if I return to it and I see it and it's not exactly lining up with how I feel in the moment, then I just have this idea, like, what was I thinking when I wrote that? Why would I write that? I shouldn't be doing it. I shouldn't even attempt this, because it's just complete whack. So I got to practice it more.
Yeah. I think your writing's good.
Cool. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I find myself now, I don't write normally that sober, to be honest, but I trip probably about once every 6 months or once every year. And I usually write before the trip, like, what do I want out of this experience? Then I'll write about the actual trip. I've tried writing during like actual psychedelic experience, but that's too difficult for me. Like actually sitting down and like journaling when, your brain is trying to pull in so much information from the outside world, that was too difficult for me.
Yeah. I did a 5-gram mushroom trip.
Yes, definitely
months.
talk about this. Yeah, this is good.
There was not, I'll just say it like straight up, like there was nothing that could have prepared me for it. It was definitely otherworldly. It was just, but I did try writing while, like you said, while I was on it, and I took, I haven't really revisited it, but because there was, like you said, so information. There's so much.
It's too much to jot down.
Yeah, and
it's too much to even comprehend in a lot of
ways.
It's like what Ryan and I talk about is, I don't know, you've heard of Terrence McKenna, of course.
Of course,
and,
yeah.
And he talks about memes before like the internet meme thing. It was obviously, he passed away in 2000, so he talks about memes as though you get these images or memories or something, and just like one image or basically one image, and you can take all this meaning from these images. And in a psychedelic trip, I feel like that is a very good practice to get into, because I was having images and I was seeing this like long timeline of like moments could last almost forever. And but when I talk about moments, I don't define moments by time. I define moments by a feeling.
Definitely.
Because when you're in a feeling that can last, that can be a moment, so there was a lot of information, and it was and by the end of the experience, it's really hard to explain, but I talk about them in the ritual more, because I feel very safe there.
Of course, yeah.
So it's really like a great integration tool. But I just remember at the end of this trip, I felt more grounded than I felt almost as if I was like underground. I was so grounded, if that makes any sense.
I remember the day after I asked you about it, and you didn't really say anything. You just said like it was intense or whatever.
There's
no words.
I couldn't talk. I was like speechless from it, really.
Yeah, but in the ritual setting, even in the ritual setting, I asked you to talk about it more, and you said, I can't, it's too scary.
Early on,
but
yeah.
Couple weeks later, you started telling more and more about it. And now even your experience has a huge impact on my life. Like your psychedelic trip, I draw so much from that I can orient my life.
Right.
And that psychedelic experience I told you about earlier, like I understand it now 3 years after, because I'm revisiting it in this ritual setting,
Right.
and kind of revisiting it and bringing it back up, reliving it kind of, and repositioning my life based on it. And that was always strange to me, because in the past, the psychedelic experiences, it kind of felt like you had to strike while the iron was hot. Like right after it happened, that was when you have all of your impacts. Like you have to change everything right now. And that's kind of what I tried to do. So it's nice to have like an integration structure where I can still draw
meaning
and power from.
Yeah, I definitely like that. And something I've noticed in my own experience is lower doses for me are actually almost better personally for psychedelic experience. I was in Nova Scotia, which is eastern part of Canada, with my girlfriend a few months ago, and I had done 2 trips. I did a 50 microgram 1P LSD trip, which is a pretty low dose for even it's an LSD derivative. And I remember during that experience feeling like it would be cool to like sit with a psychotherapist right now and just talk about stuff. That would be like a nice dose. And then I did 75, and it was much more intense and almost the more like a little bit overwhelming, but also a really intense experience. So I feel like it's, for me personally, and if you guys have found this, it's easier to integrate a lower psychedelic dose experience into my own life because it's more comprehensible, versus a higher dose gets more confusing, I'd
I
say.
agree.
Yeah,
I agree. And they used to, back when they were doing psychedelic research and studies back in like the 40s, they actually had 2 different doses. They had the psychedelic dose, and then I think it was the psycholytic dose. And that dose was talk therapy that was enhanced by the lowering of the barriers with the psychedelic. And I thought that had a lot of promise. And I was surprised that we haven't seen more of that in studies coming out more recently. I think it's a really powerful,
in
tool.
Terms of the literature now, like there's the I guess the one that we can talk about is the death and dying studies, where you probably read about people have terminal illness, terminal cancers, and they are given, usually for those studies, it's high dose psilocybin.
Yes.
But if you read a lot of the literature for like the MDMA stuff or PTSD, it's a much lower dose because they want the talk sort of therapy. They don't want the sort of like, the higher psilocybin dose, preparing someone for death is that really high dose experience, because people like, you can almost think that you're going to go maybe to the spiritual afterlife, so to speak. But at a lower dose, it's more, how can I integrate this into my own life?
Yeah, that's great. Like I said, my first experience, that ayahuasca experience in November, that
was kind of
catalyzed me into trying to get off the drugs and stuff, was a pretty low dose.
Yeah, and you talked to your family.
Yeah, I was with my family. I was able to, it was just, it was like the perfect dose. It was like, I don't know if you've ever heard the term threshold dose. Somebody laughed at me one time when I said that. My parents were like, "What the heck do you mean by that?" But I think anyway, it was like, it was just a low to medium dose, and it was one of the most impactful experiences I've ever had, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, granted, like I've never taken the 5-gram heroic dose, so I don't know what that's like. There probably could be some meaning drawn out of that experience. I've never taken one, so I'm not sure. But I've only really stuck to the lower sort of doses. I've been, I guess, too intimidated by either like taking higher doses of psychedelics or even like smoking DMT and stuff like that. I've definitely been very, for a little intimidated, I guess is the best word, by doing.
So, I've smoked DMT, but I've never had a breakthrough dose, and I'm scared to. Like you just said, it's intimidating.
Yeah.
But the 5-gram dose, I will say that there was so much. It's so hard to explain, but to me, there was so much meaning, and there were very big things that have been underlying my subconscious throughout my entire life that were brought, and they were just shown to me. So it was scary because there were things that I was hiding from. There was things that, like some of my deepest fears, you know, people say psilocybin is unrelentless, and I think it really is.
Yeah,
Like some
agreed.
of my deepest fears were just shown to me in this movie film, or this film of memes, I guess.
I remember you at one time in the ritual, you said it kind of showed you what life would be like if you kept going your way, and showed you what life would be like if you chose a different path.
So like halfway through towards the end, I was getting these vision and vibes of, if I were to keep procrastinating or whatever it is, it had this very sinister vibe. It was like everything was red and dark, but then immediately it would switch and it would be like this green, like beautiful, I could see things shimmering. It was just so nice. But then as soon as I was like going there, it would switch back, and it was doing that for like a good 30 minutes or so, and it would happen sometimes like throughout the experience. It was when I said I couldn't really talk about it, I was speechless. It's because it's very heavy stuff, very intricate, or just very emotionally heavy. But there was absolutely a lot of good meaning to get from it, and I hope to get more from, like, draw more from it in the near future.
Yeah, but I agree. I wouldn't suggest people take really high doses, and I wouldn't take a really high dose myself, because if you, especially, we don't even know what the best structure to do these things is. No. And we don't have like an integration structure that can really help you draw the most from it. And if you have that 5-gram experience and it's too much for you to handle and you repress it, that's going to make things even worse.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I think that's kind of what I did. And I think the overdose that I had was actually after that 5-gram experience, which I think is important because, you know,
it seemed like it kind of gave you a choice between life and death, and you were ambivalent to choose life. You didn't know what to choose.
Well, because it's really difficult to feel feelings that I've been trying to escape our whole life. It's really difficult.
Yeah,
life is difficult, but
it is.
Yeah,
but it's great to connect, like, with you.
I mean, it was. Yeah, it is cool. It's like I said, I saw you guys in Reddit, and that's kind of how I saw your channel. It wasn't your first thing, and I was just like, wow, this is like literally what I've been going through for the past like 10 years of maybe even more than 10 years of my life. I started noticing this. I moved from Connecticut to Kansas for a job after one of my degrees, and I just I wasn't necessarily super depressed, but I was definitely like I was less happy for whatever reason in my life. And then I moved from Kansas to Canada to do PhD, and I was still kind of like, why am I just, I didn't feel excited about life, you know? And I came to the conclusion that it was from like this feeling emotionally repressed my whole life, and not feeling like as a man I could cry and do these sorts of things. And, you know, over time, I realized this, and then during my last 2 trips, I was able to just actually like really cry pretty hard, and that was really beautiful for me. That was a super cathartic experience. So when you guys spoke about these things in your opening podcast, I was just like, I felt it so heavy. I felt it so deep.
See, that's to hear that from you is inspiring, and it's a blessing, because that's like the ultimate like miracle, like us sharing what we're doing, and other people you know, like you identifying, you know, relating to it is just like, what more can we ask for? That's what I think life is all about, is sharing experiences and connecting with people. And
the human experience all has these things that underlie all of our lives, you know, and we can connect on them. And then in our regular life, it seems like that gets pushed away, and we end up feeling so divided from each other. But if we can get to those deeper levels of connection, I think we can all live better, more enjoyable lives.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times when, as people, we have conflicts, it's always from very like short-lived conversations or prejudgments we make about people. But if we actually sat down to talk to these people about how they feel about things in an extended conversation, we could understand them, not just judge them based on like, you said this or you said that. I think that's powerful.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, like what I was saying with the insecurities, I think like naturally my insecurities tell me to judge people based off of like their their facade or whatever I see them as in the moment, but it's not really true to who they really are, because
No.
almost every single person in this world, and I believe even people that are, you know, real bad people, I think at the real core, like really, really deep down, I think they're just like all of us.
Yeah.
And it brings up the idea of the shadow that Carl Jung talks a lot about.
Yeah.
Integrated shadow.
Integrated, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I haven't heard much. The shadow thing is kind of new to me. I think I heard Anne Shulgin talking about it one time, Alexander Shulgin's wife. What is the idea behind the shadow? Is it like talk about the shadow thing? What's the idea behind that?
Yeah.
Well, I really got into Carl Jung after that first psychedelic experience, and the shadow to me was such a profound idea. It was this idea that we're all
Sorry.
It's okay. You can grab it's a cat. You can grab it. It's fine.
Yeah.
You can have your cat. That's cool. It's fine.
Yeah.
It wants to be loved. It wants to be loved
that.
too. You know what I mean? It wants some love and some affection, just like all of us. So no problem.
He loves affection.
Of course.
The main idea. But yeah, the main idea behind the shadow is that we all have a dark side. We all have the capacity to be a Hitler-like figure.
Yeah.
And if we repress that and reject it and say, no, I am never like that, I can't be like that, that's the more that it comes out, the more that is expressed, is the more that we repress it and avoid it.
Right, like the darker side of who we are, we don't, like a lot of us don't even know what that is. It's really the shadow. Like it's really like a dark thing that we don't really have much exploring of. And
like the fear of being that person is, if we repress that fear, we become more like that. So the idea behind it is, if we integrate the shadow, which is to feel the fear of being these bad people, feel the fear of, oh, maybe I'm not so great, whatever it is, feel the fear, then we can resolve it, and it doesn't actually express itself in physical form as we're bad people, you know?
Right, like when you talk about Hitler, like modern day culture, society, we say Hitler's awful, he's the worst person, right? That makes sense. But he was human being. He was a human being just like any of us. Whatever he went through in life to get him to where he was, you can't really, it's more about just accepting him for whatever he did, for who he was and where he was at in life. Obviously.
Yeah, because we don't know. If we were in his shoes, what would have happened?
Yeah. Or if you knew him, what would you have actually thought of him? If you actually knew him like psychologically and deep, what would you think of somebody like that?
Yeah, I mean, I heard some I don't know. Who knows what he went through in life, but I've heard some things that he went through. His dad was real harsh on him. I don't know. Basically, stuff. It doesn't even matter, because this isn't about him. It's just about the fact that we all have the ability to be, or we all have a shadow side to us. And like, for example, in my life, I don't want to disconnect from my family. I don't want to push them away. If anything, I want the opposite of that, you know, but
you ended up doing that.
For 10 years, because I didn't know any better, really. I wasn't aware. I didn't have the autonomy of my mind to be aware of who I could become if I'm trying to push these fears away. And instead they kind of manifest.
Something I like to ask a lot of people is like, I don't know if you, how do you guys feel about death? What do you think? Do you think there's any sort of like awareness after death, or is death like a terminal endpoint? What are your thoughts on this?
We've been thinking a lot about death recently.
Yeah, I do too. I'm terrified of death, so that's why I think about it.
I think we all are. And I think it's good that you can admit that, because people that say, oh, I'm not afraid of death, I think they're going to be hit with something when they're on their deathbed that is going to rock them.
Yeah, see, that's the point that Ryan and I have talked about. It's like when we're on our deathbed, say that we didn't have these experiences and we're not trying to work on ourselves today, and we're just on our deathbed. And it's almost as if that's going to be the worst psychedelic trip you could ever go through, because you're going to have everything that you went through just like kind of shown to you, I feel like. And it's like, well, I just wasted that entire life almost. I'm not saying that that's how people inherently will feel. I'm just saying it is a potential for that feeling to happen.
Yeah, it could overwhelm you with all those fears. But I think, like you said about the psilocybin study with
Roland Griffiths.
Yeah, with Roland Griffiths, and that is in a way a preparation for death. And I think I talk about ancient rituals a lot, and ancient rituals, ancient traditions, they had death rituals. They had these rituals that would prepare you for death, and you probably have them when you were like 16 or 17 in those times, and that would prepare you to live more fully.
Right.
You could deal with this fear of death and then overcome it and then live life more fully. And those have been completely eroded away in our modern culture. And in our modern culture, death is almost ignored, and it kind of said like, oh, you don't have to deal with that now. It's not for another 40 years. But by the time you get to it, it's kind of too late to deal with it. So I think you can use psychedelics in a ritualized setting to invoke the feeling of death and then in a way be liberated from it. I think these fears, once you can feel them, you're liberated from their control.
Well, I think it takes a lot of work and a lot of structure to be liberated from them, as much as one would like. But I definitely think that the psychedelic experience will show you the potential. That's what the ayahuasca did for me. It showed me the potential. But yeah, like you say, ancient cultures would have death rituals, or like Native Americans would go on like spirit walks when they're like 16, 17. So like for us, we graduate high school at 18, we go right to college, or we don't, and it's like that's such a
you're just left to your own devices.
Time in life where it's transitional, and we don't really like. I think a lot of people, go to college just because they don't know what they want to do, and some people don't go to college because they don't know what they want to do.
And when you talk about like what do I think death is? I mean, deep down, I really think that everything in life, all this material, is just one energy force expressed in different ways. And I think in death, that energy force returns to the source. But I also know that if I was not to experience death or try and feel it, then I could use that as a rationalization. That could become a way to avoid the feeling. So,
right, because you can just tell yourself you're going to have another chance after this life, or you're going to have an afterlife.
Or I think people can use it as a way to avoid the feeling, And so I really want to try and feel what death feels like. I want to try and surrender to it and see what happens. Like, I want to test my faith in a way, because like that's the ultimate test of faith, is giving up control of your consciousness, surrendering to it completely, and seeing what happens. And that's like the most terrifying thing in my life.
Well, like ego death, people say it's similar to an ego death, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people say you should kill your ego, and I don't agree with that.
Love your ego, man. Love it.
Yeah. The ego is just a navigational tool, right? But yeah, like you were saying, death, I think it's very like, I don't know if I hear of baptism. It's like that was a way to invoke a death-like experience with back in the biblical times. Like I'm pretty sure a baptism, they would hold your head underwater until you're literally about to die, and then you're almost reborn when you come out of the water, and you're like, okay, I understand a little bit, or whatever amount, what death would be like now, because my whole life probably just flashed in front of my eyes, and now I have to live differently. I don't have to, but most of them probably choose to.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the true baptism. Sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, I definitely have read a lot about people experiencing. It does sound interesting. Like, I'm not going to say ever in my life, like, I won't smoke DMT or 5-methoxy DMT, because I'm definitely curious enough to like have thought about it. But I think right now and for the past few years, it's been pretty terrifying to actually to go through, like, because I feel like if you smoke DMT and you actually break through, that's like if you completely lose your ego and you're nothing but this sort of energy, that probably is similar to death.
Yeah.
It's this like drastic change in consciousness. You have no awareness of your life where you were, and you're just kind of pure awareness and experiencing something, but you don't know what it is. It's like you don't really have your brain to comprehend the information.
Yeah.
So it sounds interesting.
Definitely sounds interesting.
Absolutely. And take do what you're gonna do at your own pressure. You know, you don't like I'm so scared to do a breakthrough. I don't know if I don't know when I will. If ever, I probably at some point, but it's not something I'm rushing to. You know.
Yeah, me neither. Because you hear about these people talking about breakthroughs, it feels like 500 years of experience or something. I couldn't imagine what going through that would feel like inside of a 15-minute experience.
Yeah, we were well the 5-MeO, like you were just saying. You mentioned I guess that's like I've heard DMT is like the 5th dimension, and then I heard 5-MeO is like the 12th dimension. I don't know what that means. It's too hard for me to conceptualize, but I don't know if you know anything about salvia.
I do, yeah.
We heard about this guy. Well, actually,
Ari Schaefer. He's a comedian, right?
Yeah, I guess
Shafir.
He smoked salvia on a live podcast.
Oh, geez.
And he said he lived 60 years, had a family, and all this stuff and a life, and then came back, which was 10 minutes later.
Yeah, less than 10 minutes. Salvia. Like 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I heard that, and I was like, Jesus, I don't know what good you can get out of that, but I hope there's some.
Yeah, we pretty sure, we've learned that the way to do salvia is not to smoke the extract or not smoke it at all. That the spirit in it doesn't enjoy being burned. So chewing it is the proper way to do it. But I've never done any form of salvia, and I would definitely never smoke an extract. I just wouldn't do it. There's no, I don't think there's any benefit to it. Yeah. Maybe there is, but I'm not one to venture that far.
No, that's totally fair. I'm curious enough that maybe in the next 5 or 10 years I will, but probably not anytime soon.
Yeah. I would just suggest chewing the leaves if you're going to do the salvia.
Does it have it has a psychoactive effect, chewing the leaves?
Yeah, it actually, if you swallow it, it doesn't do it. But if you chew it and
the saliva in your mouth, it activates it. And that's the traditional way to do it. In Mexico, they'll eat like 30 to 60 leaves. And
I've heard even 10 leaves will really put you somewhere. So,
but I've only seen terrible experiences when people smoke it. But I saw on Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. He chewed them and had a wonderful, blissful experience over the course of like 2 hours.
Wow.
And I don't know, I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. And we have friends who have chewed it, and they've said it's much, much more mellow. Not that it can't get you to a deep place, but that it's the coming on of it, the up. What do you call it? Like the
come up.
The come up is much more mellow. Probably similar to like a low dose of ayahuasca versus DMT. I would kind of, not that it matters, but I would probably make that comparison to like smoking the extract versus chewing the leaves.
Right. Well, I think it's that's pretty good. I think I'm satisfied with all that. That was pretty cool.
Awesome.
That was fun.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was very fun. Yeah. Enjoy talking with you, Asher.
Yeah, it was good. I'm coming to New Hampshire a year from now. Maybe I'll hit you guys up when I drive through Vermont.
You should. We live right in the smack dab in the center of Vermont, right in Waterbury.
Yeah, I'll have to come. Yeah, I have a conference up in New Hampshire, but hopefully the border opens somewhat soon. Hopefully within a year things are more resolved, because unfortunately, I can't get back into Canada if I go into the U.S.
What conference is it?
What's that?
What conference?
It's a brain and behavior neuroscience conference. It's ICRS. They run conferences about cannabis. Every 2 years they do
Really?
ICRS. Yeah, it's about cannabis. It's about like research and cannabis.
Is it open to the public?
I think so. It probably is. I can send you guys a link.
Yeah,
they were supposed to hold it in like Galway, Ireland this year, but it got canceled, of course.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of. There's one in Calgary about psychedelics that David Nichols speaks at usually. There's one up there. There's a bunch of like cannabis and psychedelic conferences kind of around North America.
We saw that you talked with David Nichols. That's cool, man.
Yeah, that was like a real.
Really...
Yeah, I had really looked up to him
I
for so many years because my first psychedelic experience really showed me that like the world is molecules, and I got fascinated with drugs being structures, and that's what led me down the whole pharmacology thing in terms of like a research kind of life. And then I read about a bunch of his stuff, and
yeah.
that was really cool. I met him in person, and then we talked on the podcast, and that was cool to talk about his publications and his life and stuff.
Awesome.
I heard him talk about he's telling you that he was at a party with Terrence.
Yeah,
And that was just such a funny story. So
yeah.
funny.
He told me some funny stories. He told me about like an unevent sort of. I was like, oh, do you ever have any bad graduate students that like messed around with a lot of drugs? And he goes, yeah, there was this one guy where you just made he had synthesized a lot of the N-bomb compounds, NBOME,
Yeah.
which did turn out to like unfortunately kill a few people from overdoses. But he had one grad student that was like he had synthesized it and he took it back to his house and he was smoking it with one of his friends. And one of the kid's friends had a bad experience, so he called Dr. Nichols. Hey, can you come over? And he kind of knew what was up because he knew the kid was messing around with some of the compounds. And he saw the kid's friend in the floor just like clutching, just kind of rocking back and forth, not saying anything. Um, and then the next day, this particular graduate student had smoked a bunch of it himself, and he got arrested. He was like running in the middle. He was in the middle somewhere in Purdue University, like on campus, running around naked, and he got arrested by the cops. And then Dr. Nichols kicked him out of the lab group because he was just too much of a liability. I thought that was an interesting story.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
That is
Because
wild.
I think when you unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunate for David Nichols, but when you do run a lab that is all about mechanism of action of psychedelic drugs, you are going to draw on some people most people are going to be interested in drugs, right?
Yeah,
Interested in
definitely.
those experiences.
Sounds like you're interested, but you sound much more responsible than most about it, which
Yeah,
is very, very
I
cool.
try, I guess.
Well, yeah.
What's pretty nice about Canada is research chemicals are kind of in this weird area where like you can they're in a gray area, right? You can buy them on the internet. It's not illegal to buy them, but if you're caught with them, it's not necessarily like you're okay. So we have
Right.
the fortunate thing where we can buy research chemicals, know what the compound is, know the dose we're taking, and I've really liked that a lot versus like I go to some guy in the streets and buy like what he tells me is LSD, and I'm like, oh yeah,
Absolutely.
okay, great.
Yeah.
No,
I like that a lot. You can control the dose a lot more.
there's a lot of respect for that, man. That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
We're just wondering, maybe we would post this too if you're okay with it, but we
Yeah,
didn't.
I don't mind. I can send you the MP4 file. And I don't know if you guys use any video editing software to like edit stuff, but I'll probably do some of that stuff too.
Okay.
Yeah, you can. So whatever you want to do, if you want to send it after you edit it or whatever,
Yeah,
we
I
just
can even
we think
send
this
it before. Yeah, it's fine.
I think
maybe we can just promote his, because I mean everyone on our thing will just see this.
Yeah, what I do want to do is Ryan, you said you had where you wrote down all your experiences. I kind of want the link for that too. I want to post that. You said you had like
that'd be
a
awesome.
blog or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to post your Cultivating Connections link and then also the writings. I actually want to read those. Right, that sounds interesting. I want to read those.
Right on. Yeah, I'll send those to you. And yeah.
Great.
This is super cool conversation, Asher. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and hopefully we get to meet in person. The border opens. I'll come by and hang out for a few hours or something. That'd be fun.
That would be really fun.
Absolutely.
I love the area you guys live in. So I love driving through Vermont. It's gorgeous.
We'll show you around, or we know the area. We've been here a long time. So
awesome.
All
All right, guys.
All right,
Bye.
Asher.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.